welcome to the Monday Night Football Show here at Radio Saltaire. You're here with your host, Scott McIntosh, and with me today in the studio is Mark Smith and Sean Meechan. Say hello, fellas.
Hello, fellas.
Thanks very much.
In tandem there.
Much for that, guys. Now, we've also got Craig in the studio tonight, but he's actually going to be recording a special interview with an ex-Hibs player, and that will be making part of our special Christmas episode. So we're going to leave the name nameless just now, and you can spend the next couple of weeks trying to think who it could possibly be. Now, straight off tonight, we're going to cover the Hearts and Hibs games from the weekend, and then we're going to go straight on to speaking with ex-Hearts star Neil Pointon over the phone at roughly about 7:15 for anyone who's tuning in specifically for that segment. Now, straight on to the Hearts game tonight, Sean. Finished Hearts 1, Motherwell 0 from Saturday. Just initially, what was your main sort of feelings about how the game went as you walked out the stadium?
It's a bit of a weird one, to be honest. You have to be positive coming away. You have to be positive coming away from the game because Hearts have got 3 points. However, I didn't necessarily feel like we played as well as we have done in some of the games where we've not came away with a win. It was a bit of a mixed bag. The goal, which we'll go into more depth with, is scrappy, but that's kind of what we needed at this point in time. Look, I would have snatched your anything off for 3 points at the start of the game. So the biggest thing coming away from it is we finally got a win back at Tynecastle, and that's hugely important.
I thought that one of the major aspects that maybe spoilt the game in terms of a neutral standpoint was probably the amount of injuries before and then during the match for both sides. So naturally, walking into the ground, we were made aware that Louis Moult was missing. Trevor Carson, the goalkeeper, was also out, plus alongside Peter Hartley, who's been very instrumental for Motherwell, particularly in set play scenarios. So they were already missing a number of players, and then during the first half, Jamie Walker and Chris Cadden both pulled up with injuries as well and came off. How much of an impact do you feel that had on the overall quality of the game, or do you think it was always likely to be a bit of a struggle given the physical nature of both sides just now?
I think it took away, especially Moult being missing, takes away a lot of that counter that Motherwell could have brought to try and sit back and then break against us. Not that, certainly with the form they're in compared to we've been in, I don't think they necessarily should be coming to Tynecastle at the moment. But I think it'll definitely have forced the hand with their managerial team having to change the tactics they would have wanted to bring into the game. So, look, injuries early on in games, it's all fine and well before the first whistle. You can legislate for that. That's why you've got your squad to work with. When injuries come early in the game, that's when not only is that forcing your hand with how you progress during the early stages of the game, that's limiting your options at the end of the game also. So it was an awkward one, to be honest. It wasn't a glamorous tie. I think whether Chris Cadden and Jamie Walker had stayed on the park, I still don't think it would have been the most glamorous of ties. But I think it did force the hand slightly with both teams into changing the style of play. Then again, I think Chris Cadden was having a wee bit more influence on the game than Jamie Walker was at that point in time. Jamie's cutting a pretty frustrating figure at this moment in time and has done for a long time, but even his goal return this season, you can see it. It's so easy for him to turn it on and turn it back off at this moment in time, and it just looked like before the injury, it didn't look like he was going to turn it on at any point on Saturday. So I think it possibly benefited Hearts by Jamie coming off.
In terms of urgency then, there seemed to be a little bit more urgency for the centre of the park, particularly from Jubin Boabin on Saturday. Now again, you could say a lot about the decision making and how that maybe could have been better in the final third, but there definitely seemed to be a bit more drive, a bit more purpose, moving the ball on a little bit quicker. How do you feel that centre partnership's going to bode for us in the coming weeks? Would you still like to see a few changes made there with regards to the recruitment in January, or have you seen enough recently in the last 2 or 3 home games to suggest that that could be an effective pairing for us moving forward?
I think, regardless of the job they're doing at the moment, I think there's a need for at least one extra body in there. One, to cover for injuries, and two, to try and force the hand of shaking it up a bit and making players not being able to rest on their laurels that they're going to be in the team just now, because we are short enough in that position that, I mean, Jum's guaranteed a start every single game pretty much now that he's back fit. That shouldn't be the case. That's not particularly healthy for a team to have that guarantee of players coming in. I mean, you look at Liverpool-Everton at the weekend. Coutinho never got on the park at any point in time. That most people wouldn't have expected that, but I think that's almost one of... He's came back into the team, he scored a hat-trick in the Champions League, but the team's not all about you still. Yes, there's probably other extenuating factors. I'm not a mind reader, and Jurgen Klopp probably knows more about the game than me, but I think there's definitely needs to be more of a shake-up in the centre of the midfield. Yes, Prince... The biggest issue with Prince Buaben at this point in time is he is now a utility player. He fills in the gaps when the gaps need to be filled. Don Cowie is a player who's not necessarily setting the world alight for me at this moment in time. I've been one of his biggest fans since his time coming into Hearts. But even his set pieces, one of his biggest strengths, he just don't seem to be going right for him. I don't know why John Souttar's been taken off them and Don Cowie's back on them. But I think Prince isn't a guaranteed starter in the midfield. I think Cowie at the moment isn't a guaranteed starter in the midfield. Jum's going to start every game regardless. But I think we definitely need more of a shake-up in there. We need something more than, yes, we're getting function just now, but we should be able to provide more than just function on a weekly basis.
Moving away then for the centre of the park and focusing more on certain individuals that seem to make a bit of an impact on Saturday. One of them was undoubtedly Kyle Lafferty. Showed great, mixture of determination and composure to get the goal. Now, one thing that I've noticed looking back on the last sort of 5 or 6 goals that we've scored over the last couple of months is that you could attribute all of them to individual skill rather than any sort of team goal. Lafferty against Rangers, free kick. Goncalves against Killian Partick, individual moments of brilliance. Walker against Partick, Hamilton I should say, another free kick. Is it quite worrying that we still seem to be lacking a bit of a spark, even although players such as Milinkovic and that have been getting a bit more game time since we've switched back to Tynecastle? And how do you think a potential signing like Niall McGinn would be able to improve what we currently have in terms of personnel in those areas?
It's bringing fluidity to the system, a freedom of movement of players that is not a rigid structure of a 4-4-2 or, everyone's in a position. It's a bit more movement, a bit more roaming. Something that I think we've been crying out for since June was playing off the front man. I mean, since then, we've not really had a player who's been able to break the lines and, pop up in an area that you're like, well, why is he here? But at the same time, it's brilliant because their defence isn't expecting him to be there either. So definitely someone like Niall McGinn, anyone who can just bring a different style of play into the team, especially if they've got a bit of pace and trickery, would be hugely helpful at this point in time. I think it goes back to your previous point as well with the centre midfield. If we can get players in who are going to be able to break the lines, influence the play from there, and maybe take a wee bit of the onus off the wide players having to tuck in to try and get the ball and do something, and give them the freedom to stay wide and try and get those opportunities because there's someone who can play a pass through. That's the biggest thing just now. Is not that we've not got runs breaking the lines. There's very few passes. When was the last time? Genuinely, when was the last time at Tynecastle that you saw a really good through ball? It just doesn't happen. Even when someone's making even square balls along the box, so many times they're fluffed. They're just behind the person, or they'll go to put it in and it'll be over someone's head. We need someone who will be able to take the game by the scruff of the neck, put their foot on the ball and either pick passes or be decisive on what they want to actually do with the ball.
It seems to be almost like you say, trying to get a bit of a balance throughout the squad. We seem to have players who can perform one of the tasks that we've just mentioned, but maybe not at all. So there is players there who can, play a good forward pass, whether that be, Arnold Zoom, or even a bit of a forgotten man like, say for example, Mauri Martin. But then the problem is they don't quite have the legs that give us that drive that I think we're missing, in particular in the bigger matches. If we're talking about, games with the likes of Hibs or Celtic and that recently, we're missing that drive that the likes of McGinn and McGeoch and Bartley can give you. And it does seem to be now it is hard to get a player with all those attributes, especially on the budgets that you're talking about in Scottish football. Apart from Niall McGinn, what sort of other areas of the park would you like to see us sort of try and focus on when it comes to recruiting players in January?
I think left back needs to be addressed big time. There was a few times in the game at the weekend I felt that Michael Smith was hung out to dry a wee bit by being, and through no fault of his own, just he's not playing on his natural side. He'll try his best to get down the line, but when he's getting into positions, putting in crosses on his left, that's no his strong suit. That's no what he shouldn't. No one should be expecting him to be able to put a cross in perfectly on someone's head on his weak side all the time, which we're looking at. A lot of our play, I especially felt in the second half, was going down the left-hand side, and it is tough for him when he's having to cut back all the time. Yes, there is players who do it, but he signed for us as a right back. He should be a right back. It's only out of necessity that he's having to play on that side. So getting a left back that, one, is of any decent quality, and two, can stay fit on a regular basis is a must. It's been a must for the past couple of seasons. And yes, we've had players come in, but they've not been of the standard that we've needed. So that definitely needs to be there. I think once we get that, once we can get that solidity, so there's not constant change in fullbacks, I think we can get defensive solidity. There is still the issue we could probably do another centre half as well, although I don't think Craig Levine's necessarily that'll be at the forefront of his mind. But Aaron Hughes' injury record is fairly shocking since he's been at the club, and yes, it's to be expected of someone of his age, but then he shouldn't be. He should be a emergency player at best, and we should be using him for his knowledge in the club. So I think you're pretty much, there's a lot of positions across the park that we could definitely improve on, but I think left back is definitely the one where we need a player.
Speaking of that position then, I think that perfectly segues onto my sort of last question with regards to this part of the show this evening. Conor Randall slotted in at right back in favour of Jamie Brandon, who was suspended after his red card against Hamilton the week before. How do you think Conor got on? Now, I personally, watching Conor Randall play for Hearts, have felt that his best performances for us have came in at right back, and I've already championed Jamie Brandon to potentially make a position for himself as a central midfielder, which is where he played predominantly for the Rangers youth teams. Could you see there being a bit of a swap there with regards to that, given that Jamie could give us a bit of composure moving forward from midfield, and Conor Randall seems to be, positionally speaking, a more sound defender than Jamie is just now, given his raw talent and the fact that he still needs a bit more game time?
I think possibly. Certainly the best performance I saw from Conor Randall was him in that wing-back position at Murrayfield, when he was actually getting a licence to roam, get up the line, and obviously he is more defensively minded, so he was getting back. There was no issue of getting caught in behind, but it gave him a wee bit more creative licence, which I think in centre midfield, especially in a midfield three, he's sometimes crowded out, and it's far too easy. I think Perry Kitchen was caught out with that before as well, as too easy to look for the pass back, especially when you've got two centre halves in John Souttar and Christophe Berra who like to play the ball between each other as much as they do. Well, that can help your pass completion record if you're just playing it between the three as in a triangle. So I think it's possible. My biggest thing with Conor Randall is his playing situation for next season. I think that'll hinge on January, on whether or not there's any chance of him being a Hearts player next season. I think that could help or hinder how many times we'll actually see him turn out in a Hearts jersey later in the season. On the Brandon side of things, I mean, I've been saying for a while, I think he's probably a right midfielder as opposed to a centre midfielder, because he looks fairly comfortable down the line, but his biggest thing is how comfortable he is on the ball and his good ball control. The amount of times that you'll see him run at a man without actually looking at the ball. He's got his head up a lot of the time, so you can actually see things which you wouldn't necessarily see in certainly a Scottish defender that I think would be better suited to him playing. Possibly in the centre midfield. It's something I've not seen. I've seen him, or certainly not seen in a Hearts jersey, at the times where he's played in more advanced positions for Hearts so far, though, further up the line, I think he's flourished. I think he's best in that final third, taking on a man and putting in a cross. So I could see him definitely moving into that position. I think, I've said it before, I've said it a couple of weeks ago, the biggest thing for Jamie Brandon, and it's less so than Callum Patterson, because Callum Patterson was still a tall guy, but it's how he progresses physically in the next few years that will determine where he plays on the park and how good he can be. Because technical ability, he's got everything with the ball at his feet. Well, not everything, but there's a good starting point. So we'll see how it goes with him. But I think at the moment, especially with the sending off, although it's one for a young laddie, it's hard to see why. Like, it's hard to see why he's not went in with that challenge. It's naive, but it does happen. But I definitely think in the coming couple of weeks up until January, we'll probably see Conor Randall in there more than Jamie Brandon.
I think that's a valid comment you make with regards to Brandon playing right back and how he will need to develop himself in a physical sense. Now, again, genetics has been getting a bit of a hard press, particularly over the last few months, given how Gordon Strachan seemed to implement it in his sort of post-match interviews for Scotland. But at the end of the day, this is what a lot of Scottish football teams will do. They'll look at the wing backs. Now, Hibs could probably, Mark could come in and maybe chime in on this as well. You look at somebody like Lewis Stevenson, when he was younger and playing left back for Hibs, it is something that teams will try and exploit. They'll play long diagonals and they'll try and stick their tallest front man on top of them and just go for those long diagonals and, work on the knockdown. So as much as you don't want the game to be solely focused on that side of things, in this country, it is given a lot of attention and a lot of scope by opposition managers. So you're right in sort of flagging that up. And for me, I would really like to see Brandon get a run of games in midfield, whether that be right midfield or centre, because I do think he's got something to add in there, and I do think Randall does have a part to play for us in those full-back areas as well. But thank you very much for giving us all that insight with regards to the Hearts game at the weekend there, Sean. So we're now going to move over to Mark and discuss Hibernian 2, Celtic 2, which was the live Sky Sports game from yesterday lunchtime. Now, this is going to be quite a weird game to try and cover as a neutral. I think as a Hibs fan, naturally there's that euphoria. You've came back for 2-0 down in the last, 15 minutes of the game. You could even have sneaked it and got given where you were after 70 minutes, a very unlikely victory. But I found the game to be quite lacking in terms of quality and excitement leading up to that point. Now, as a Hibs fan, where's your main focus just now that the game's ended? Is it a case of focusing on how they've responded so well in a mental aspect to come back from 2-0 down? Or does a lot need to be made about the fact that they were so poor for the opening 70 minutes of that match?
I think I'll jump straight on the defensive bandwagon there. I don't think we're poor for the whole of 70 minutes, Scott. We're playing against Champions League opposition, and we neutralised each other with a lot of
Champions League by name, maybe not by quality.
No, in my opinion, I think Hibs done really well. We're fortunate not to be 3-0 down, to be honest, after 60 minutes before Celtic actually went on to score 2 goals. We were poor in certain positions. Celtic showed their depth and quality. However, for me, the major positive that I'm reflecting on is the mentality, that kind of never give up attitude. Historically, with previous Hibs teams, I've seen us go 2-0 down at home, and half the stadium starts to empty. And you get to that point where, as a fan, you're going, oh well, that's that. Move on to the next game. The amount of people that didn't leave the stadium, is testament to, I guess, the expectation from the fans that even though we're 2-0 down to the champions at home, everybody's still sitting on their seats because they know this season that we've got a chance of getting something. You get a goal, you're back in the game. That'll rock the boat with Celtic, and that's exactly what happened. I thought the first goal that we conceded from Sinclair's positioning, it was just pure luck. Zinging of a shot, hit off the inside of the post, and literally, there's three Hibs defenders inside the 6-yard box, and literally it's cannoned off the post and fell at Sinclair's feet. He sticks it in the back of the net. Not even 4 minutes later, he's left Whittaker. He's cut on the inside, dribbled along the whole of the 18-yard box, and then it's deflected off. It was either Bartley or Ambrose and into the back of the net, 2-0. So you're thinking, okay, do we deserve to be behind here at this point? I think the majority of the stadium probably would have argued that we would. It was okay for us to be behind. There was a couple of simple errors, not to single anybody out. But McGeoch early doors, he had a really lackadaisical pass, and he let James Forrest in, and I'm surprised that he didn't tuck it away to go 1-0 up. But I think for me the most important thing is the mentality. Hibs are in a position now that even against top opposition, 2-0 down, they got themselves back into the game. We got arguably the break of the ball when Ambrose got a deflected shot at the back of the net. That put Celtic on the back foot, and then a few minutes later, Ollie Shaw comes on and puts in a second one, and we were unlucky. I mean, my heart was in my throat. You just had the feeling that there was a chance, that we would go on and we would score the third. And when Gordon didn't catch that ball in the dying minutes of the game, he just fumbled it. The ball broke to Shaw, and I'm thinking, he's got a shot away, and how the heck Lustig managed to get a foot on that, I don't know. But no, it was a really exciting end to the game. Really exciting end to the game.
Now, it is your job as a Hibby, and I'm glad you are focusing more on the positives, because as the bitter Jambo hosting the show, I'm going to try and drag you back down to the depths of our own lack of quality just for our play. Now, just sort of sticking more so with... Oh, sorry, Sean, have you got something to say?
I was just going to, before we get into the proper negatives, I just want to get Mark's input on, were you surprised that Shaw came on before Murray? And that Murray never got on at any point?
That's a bit of a loaded question, is it though? Although saying that,
he came on and got a goal.
I've done it twice now, because they actually done the same thing at Hampden.
We were having a debate in the stand actually. When we were watching the game about, was it right that Stokes started? Given
I think
his recent...
that's probably more the question rather than Shaw getting in ahead of Murray. It's why was Stokes picked ahead of Murray?
Yeah, I mean, you look at it as, we don't know if there's been rumour mill of disciplinary issues with him, and his attitude recently. Stokes has always got baggage off the pitch. Murray's he potentially could be asking the question, what more do I need to be doing to get a start in the big games? His off the ball work rate is fantastic. He's banging in the goals. So I think he might be a little bit aggrieved today. Great for Ollie Shaw, and maybe Lennon just had that, kind of that gut feeling, that he came on in the cup tie, he scored against Celtic. Go on, prove your worth. This is your chance. Get an equaliser and put us into a pole position to try and break this 67 game run for that Celtic are on currently. I
mean, you definitely can't argue that point, because it ultimately worked for them, and it could even worked even better if it hadn't been for Mikael Lustig in the last minute. What's interesting to me is that Simon Murray, for all his strengths about how he chases the game down and how he can pull defenders all about the place, he can wear them down. I actually think that goes against them in these big matches.
Big matches,
Neil
yeah.
Lennon tended, just looking at it for a neutral, specifically the first hour of the match, he seemed to want to just try and neutralise Celtic's threat and then try and hit them on the break naturally with the two wide men. Have John McGinn pressing as high as he can on Scott Brown the majority of the time, almost playing as Scott Brown's shadow.
Absolutely.
Which we will, go to later on in the show. Would you say that that's actually then went against Simon Murray, the fact that for what he actually brings to the team in terms of the fans watching and seeing that commitment, he lacks the positional sense and maturity to maybe start these bigger matches? And that's, I mean, given his age, it's something that still might come with time.
I think that's learnings for him. And when he does, run about like a headless chicken, sometimes you do think, you just watch Stokes, his off the ball position, and sometimes, he just intuitively knows where he should be, and that's just learnt through years and years of playing at a top level. One of the things, just moving off topic slightly, that I was a little bit frustrated about yesterday was when Stokes was on the pitch and we were getting into positions where we had set plays. There was one where Stokes was standing over the ball. We're just on the corner of the 18-yard box. There was one in the in the second half where McGinn ended up taking the free kick, and in my opinion, Stokes has got the quality to test the keeper in both those positions, and from my perspective, if Lennon was playing Stokes ahead of Murray in that game, then he's doing it because he's got that talent that can potentially win games. And I didn't understand why, in those set pieces that Stokes didn't have, a shot at goal. Because that in my opinion is one of the key reasons why Stokes is starting these games, because he's got that depth and he's got that finesse about him that from a dead ball, from a set piece, he can test the keeper. And if that's part of his rationale for saying, right, I'm going to put Anthony in, big game player, he could take a free kick from 20 yards and stick it in the back of the net. I didn't really see that yesterday, and that was probably my only frustration and observation, that if you were questioning why Simon Murray not starting ahead of Stokes, that would be my thinking behind potentially what Lennon's thinking, and didn't really materialise for me.
Sticking with Neil Lennon then in his selections for the game. Now, this one might sound a little bit strange at first to Hibs fans listening in. Do you think that there is a space for Dylan McGeoch in a Hibs side that are only going to have about 20% possession for the first half an hour of a home game? Because he looked...
Scott, we're playing at home against Celtic. Come on.
But that's what I'm saying. Is there a space for someone who's predominantly a playmaker to play in that midfield? He didn't offer a lot when Hibs were basically, chasing shadows for that first half.
Yeah, no, I think there is, because in my opinion, McGeoch is, is a talent. He's got great technique, and
but that's not the argument. I'm not disputing his talent.
But
I'm disputing how he can be utilised in the right way in that type of match.
No, absolutely. And what I was going to allude to was, his quality just to pick out a pass. So when Hibs were countering yesterday, McGeoch with McGinn pressing a bit higher in the game, with the wingers, it was McGeoch that was distributing a lot of the ball. From the centre midfield, Bartley was the enforcer. He was down, kind of breaking up play. And then, a lot of the time they were finding McGeoch on the ball, and, he was then picking out passes to Barker, long balls over the top down to Boyle on the wing. He was playing McGinn, more direct through the middle and being a bit of a driving force. But personally, I feel like McGeoch didn't have the greatest of games yesterday. He was a bit lackadaisical in the first half an hour, made a couple of individual errors, and, maybe his confidence was a little bit, maybe he was feeling a bit under the weather. I don't know, but he just didn't feel as sharp yesterday. But to answer your question, though, I feel he does, fit in that formation. I think it was just a role reversal from the previous couple of weeks where you see, McGinn he was sitting a lot higher, in the, almost at the tip of the diamond in that midfield.
One of the things that I found quite interesting about Celtic's approach to the match, and again, I don't think this is generally just specific to playing Hibs, but they have been a little bit more, how shall I put it, they've just been a little bit more jaded with regards to their performances in the league this season, albeit they've still managed to keep that domestic unbeaten run going. There was an air of almost a sort of friendly about the game yesterday. I don't know what it was. There was a lot of 50-50 tackles that just didn't seem... There was just something, I don't know what it is, but now it's a good thing, but they almost seem to be giving themselves almost too much respect, and there's almost this atmosphere. I don't know, Sean, you look very much keen to sort of get involved in this.
Yep, I don't know if it's the Neil Lennon factor or what it is, but there's definitely a level of respect that seems to come from Celtic towards Hibs that no other team in the league gets, and I don't know what it is. And yes, Matt, look at you smiling away at me. Yes, Hibs, there's no issue. Hibs take full advantage of that, and hence why they've got 2 draws against them this year. But it seems like Celtic play differently against Hibs a lot of the time in the season, and wouldn't necessarily set up to the point of you're like, if you just played your normal game, you'd probably get better results. I don't know why you're changing it against Hibs.
Well, that's what I was saying about with regards to the last 20 minutes. As much as, and again, that's why I put in this bit of the opening question, a lot of it is down to Hibs' own mentality and the fact that they're still capable of bringing the game back on level terms and potentially nicking it. There seemed to be a lacky desire on the Celtic part to actually really just finish them off, because really, I mean, I wouldn't say Celtic were brilliant yesterday by all means. They didn't play that great. They had a lot of the ball, but there wasn't really a lot of a cutting edge in the final third.
Well, they had a lot of shots on target. I mean, Marciano had a fantastic save. Scott Sinclair caused all sorts of problems, for Whittaker and Ambrose, and he got in behind Whittaker quite a few times. Marciano had a great save. Marginally offside, for Celtic's third. Had that stayed, and then that was it. It was game over. And I think Brendan Rodgers was right with his post-match analysis. They could have comfortably have been 4-5-0 up. You look at Forrest's first half miss, and there was a couple of last gasp chances. Boyata, I think, headed over the bar. But take nothing away from Hibs. They came back excellent. I mean, going on the defensive here, we've scored 6 goals against Celtic in the past 3 games. And, we're undefeated against them in the league. We've had 2 draws and we were unlucky in the cup game. But there's not many teams that'll put 6 goals past Celtic.
No, I would agree.
And Celtic still remain undefeated against them. Do you know what I mean? So people are saying, I can see where you're both coming from. But I don't particularly agree with that. I think Celtic are winners, and they want to win.
I'm not saying they're setting out in a way that they're not trying to win. I'm just saying it seems like there's a weird change of tactics and almost mentality going into the Hibs games, which I really didn't see at any other point. It is one of those ones that is a weird atmosphere, even certainly watching it on TV. It seems like an kind of 2 big Scottish teams playing against each other atmosphere. It's definitely, yes, people make comparisons with the old ties between Rangers and Hearts and Celtic and Hibs. You wouldn't get that atmosphere at a Rangers and Hearts game. It would be a lot more volatile. It just didn't have that cutthroat atmosphere that you would be expecting from that tie that you've expected in previous years.
You will look at a lot of the players in the park have played with each other. You look at there's a lot of crossover between the current squads. Stoke's been at Celtic, and what are you chuckling away at, Sean?
No, nothing. Freezing.
It's that immature that he's chuckled at that usage of the term playing with themselves.
Playing with each other.
Oh, they're playing with each other.
Your mind's wandering.
Well, see, my mind's even further in the gutter than it is with yours, eh?
You've got Stokes, you've got McGeoch, you've got Ambrose, you've got Brown. There's a lot of affinity between the 2 clubs, especially in transfer markets over the years. And I think potentially years to come, you might see McGinn going to Celtic at some point in his career. It might be January, it might be the summer if he doesn't get a big money move down south. We'll touch upon that in a few questions' time, Scott. But that's the only thing that I can really pinpoint is, the fact that there's maybe a mutual respect because, a lot of the players have played for both clubs, and they want to see themselves do well. So
I would like to sort of just add in, with regards to atmosphere, and this is something I would like to applaud Hibs on this season, is that there does seem to have been a shift with regards to their mindset in these matches. Obviously, given what they've been able to achieve under Lennon and primarily before that through Alan Stubbs, they are capable of now raising their game in those games. And you've seen it even with the attendances they're getting now. Now, Sunday was a live television game. Wednesday again's live on Sky.
Sold out.
If I'm right
Brilliant.
in thinking, they've both been sold out. So they definitely do deserve great praise for that. But again, given that it is my job to be a little bit sort of devil's advocate on this, we're now going to go back to discussing certain players. Now, I just want to also add in, because I know some people might be wanting us to maybe talk about the refereeing decisions yesterday, in particular one involving Dedrick Boyata and Dylan McGeoch. Now, for me, there's not much point in us discussing it amongst the three of us. I think it just, what do you say? It was a red card, and he chose not to send that player off because he was going to book him, and then he realised that he was already on a booking. And for me, there's no point in us spending 10-15 minutes to cover that. I don't see how anyone can argue that after watching the footage of not only the tackle itself, but John Beaton's body language for the next sort of 30 seconds after that. Moving on to the last point that I want to discuss with regards to yesterday's game then. Now, Brendan Rodgers, I don't know what it was, but there seemed to be enough sour grapes that he could have owned his own vineyard by the end of the interview. But he just seemed to... About McGinn and Brown, he seemed to be on the defensive with regards to that. Now, I actually felt that neither player was particularly playing at their peak levels. I thought that they both played okay, and McGinn done a decent job of sort of neutralising Brown whenever he could, but I don't think it was a particularly brilliant performance from either. What was your make of that, and how this now seems to be getting encompassed as an overall debate? It's not just ourselves talking about it. I'm pretty sure even Sportsround were going to discuss it tonight. But what was your make on both of their performances?
Yeah, within the first 5 minutes, you could see that it was almost like a, do you want my job type attitude from Scott Brown. That was almost his approach on the park to McGinn. It was almost like a chest out, testosterone driven battle between the two in the centre of the park, and that was kind of taken away, possibly distracting both players, to be honest. For me, for 90 minutes, I felt that a lot of the time they were trying to get one up on each other, much to my amusement towards the end of the match when McGinn he done Brown quite a few times, just turning off his shoulder and, getting the break of the ball, riding his challenges, etc. Brown's heading towards the end of his career. When you look at McGinn, he's been touted for, the driving force of the Scottish midfield over the next few years, potentially. If he is going to get a big money move to Celtic, is he potentially Scott Brown's successor? And I think that was the attitude that a lot of people were, relishing, and there was a big focus on that yesterday. I think they both, potentially, that was on both their minds. It was maybe a bit of a distraction in terms of, how they played and their focus during the game. But they were cancelling each other out a lot of the game. That's my opinion. I think they're both quality midfielders, and sometimes they just cancel each other out.
I felt like there was a wee competition going on between them to see who could
definitely
give away the most fouls without getting a book in.
Yeah.
It was.
Brown,
it went a bit crazy for a wee while. And look, we all know, and we've discussed it a lot of times on the show previously, Scott Brown usually gets away with murder. I think Brendan Rodgers had said, well, we might have him, so let's see how he gets on with it as well. Because they were both, it was literally for a while seeing like who could outdo the other one for like the foul counts. I think if you looked at the two of them, would be mental with them getting a book in.
Yeah.
So
I think Mark described it perfectly at the end of the day. It was almost like an informal interview for that vacancy.
Are you good enough for it?
Yeah. Next,
you think you could do my job?
I'm probably not going to be playing every week. Can you come in and sort of step up to the plate? Because you can see that there is a bit of a respect there, and they've naturally spent a bit of time with each other now in the Scotland squads. And I mean, I don't think it would be daft to suggest that John McGinn will be fairly high on Celtic's list of potential signings that they can bring in during the next 12 months or so. But thanks very much for that input tonight with regards to that, Mark. Now, we're now just going to run off for a quick ad break. We'll have a couple of ads to play out to you. And then when we come back, we're going to have Neil Pointon on the phone, who's going to discuss a little bit about his time at Hearts in the 90s. Stay tuned on Radio Saltire.
Music for Scotland. This is Radio Saltire.
And we're back here on the Monday Night Football Show. Thank you again for all our listeners for sticking in with us. Now tonight we do have a special host, or guest I should say, joining us on the phone, and it is ex-Hearts star Neil Pointon. Neil, are you there?
Hello, have you got me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Neil. How you doing?
Yeah, fine, thank you.
Perfect. Okay, so we're getting you on just now to talk about your long and illustrious career, and especially your time with Hearts. First off, can you just give us a few words on your time in general at Hearts?
Yeah, well, obviously got a chance to come up to Scotland in the sort of November of '95. I think the team was struggling at the time. Jim Jeffers had just taken over and sort of needed to bring a few different faces in. Got there in about the November. Knew a few players that I played against for England. Obviously John Robertson when he was at his time at Newcastle for a short stint. Sort of met him more or less the same day as I signed. Got some good friends through the first couple of weeks. Showed me around Edinburgh with my wife. Settled in really quickly. Unfortunately, the first game against Falkirk, I pulled my hamstring slightly, but that gave me time to sort of like go into Tynecastle and have a look around the club and get to know sort of the ins and outs and everybody really, the physios, the secretaries, all made me feel welcome. And obviously we picked up in the league and then ended the season playing at Hampden in an FA Cup final.
Perfect. Now, you were one of the first players brought in as part of that sort of Jim Jeffries revolution at Hearts. Now, what are your memories of the place at the time when you joined? Did you get a sense that it was a club that was maybe just on the brink of a bit of a crisis?
Yeah, like I think some clubs always go through a sort of spell of a change around, and it was targeted as the third biggest club in Scotland when I joined up, and I spoke to a few people about Hearts. I remember playing there when I was at Everton. We came up to play in a testimonial game, and I thought the crowd and the atmosphere was superb. Obviously, it's like capital city, but when I went up, I wasn't prepared for the changes that had happened at Tynecastle. The two sides of the ground had just been rebuilt, and then while I was there, obviously another side had got rebuilt, and I've just seen that it's been completed now, and it looks spectacular. So the atmosphere was there, the crowds were there, regular 18,000 coming to watch, even though we're at the bottom of the league. But we picked up quite a thing, and like you say, there was 3 new faces, an Italian, a Frenchman, and an old Englishman. And we sort of like gave the lads there a little bit of boost, exactly what Jim had wanted, and they responded. And likes of Robertson, Big Slim, a few others were brought in, and all of a sudden it clicked up a little bit again.
It did seem to sort of perk itself up fairly quickly, in terms of trying to mix, like you say, the established players, the more sort of foreign, continental sort of element to the squad, and then some of the younger players that maybe hadn't been given a chance under previous managers. For you, how quickly did it gel? And considering that you were signed at a time that the club were bottom, to actually be up towards sort of further fourth spot by sort of 2 or 3 months later, what could you put or pinpoint on how quickly that actually brought about some success?
I think it was a case of like Jim knew what he wanted to do. He wanted to like freshen it up. It just sometimes it's hard for a manager to sort of get that. The balance between this is what I want you to do and you're going to do it, to somebody coming in and saying, yeah, we're going on the right ways here. This will work, boys, I'm telling you. And it's sort of like the older ones were sort of like Robbo and Slim. Craig Levine, obviously, had just gone through his cruciate injury, so he was sort of like the club captain as well. And he was saying, yeah, we just need to get it together, and a bit of sort of enthusiasm really from the likes of me, Pascal and Gilles, and it just sort of clicked, both on and off the pitch. Pascal liked his Italian food, and he took a few of the lads out. I obviously, like to drink and, socialise, because I think it was a big part of getting to know players both on and off the pitch. You need to sort of know what the lads are like and what they're going to do, and how they're going to look after themselves preparing. And then next thing, it was like a few of the younger lads were coming through. Stevie Frail, Lockie was doing really well, a few other lads. And then the next season, even more youngsters came through, which, the style sort of suited what Jim wanted to do, and he had that little bit of a foresight that where he wanted to take the club.
Now, I notice it might just be a bit of a Freudian slip, and it has been over 20 years since you first joined the club, Neil, so I'll try and cut you some slack. But when you're talking about the established foreigners coming in at the same time, there's always a mention of Pasquale and Big Gio, but there's no mention of Hans Eskilsson. Is there any particular reason for that?
I don't think sort of Hans settled in quite so well. Sometimes you have your crowd favourites, and Robbo was certainly a crowd favourite. He's a hot goal scoring record, and everybody sort of wanted Robbo to do well. Even with in the '98 Cup final, everybody was hoping Robbo would get on and he'd get his medal and this, that, and the other. So for somebody to be there long, I could say it was a bit like when there was at City, and Clive Allen was a big crowd favourite, but he didn't sort of get on. And a lad called Adrian East played week in, week out, but they never took to him. And sometimes that happens with fans. You just so Robbo comes on as a sub and scores one. Robbo starts and he scores two, whereas Hans didn't sort of get that sort of momentum going. And we had that little bit of a mishap when we were in the Derby game.
Going on to sort of some more positive memories then, particularly during that first season. Now, it seems to be that when we're going to discuss your time at Hearts, a lot of memories, whether that be, positive or negative, are going to sort of work its way back to Rangers. It just seems to be one of these clubs where I was looking through all the sort of major talking points throughout your time at the club. It does seem to sort of switch back to that one club. Now, to begin with, very shortly after you joined the club, around 3 or 4 months after that, with a great 3-0 performance at Ibrox in January '96 when Alan Johnston scored that hat-trick. Now, in terms of individual performances, where does that kind of rank in terms of what you've seen for fellow teammates?
I think at the end of the day, you play clubs like 4 times in Scotland, so you've got 2 away games and 2 home games, and that day just sort of like everything clicked for us. We were going there with positives, and everybody was on a high, and sort of like the Rangers players, sort of can take a little bit of 2 things easy, if you want to say, and they just thought they just had to turn up at Ibrox and they'd win. And we went there and we sort of we were free flowing to a certain degree. And Sticky was he was there, he was quick. They didn't sort of know how to take him, and he sort of ran them riot, and they just couldn't get it going. So it's on the downside for us. It was a case where we played really well, and Rangers didn't hit the sort of heights that we know they can do.
Now, during those few weeks, we seem to be getting a bit of a number on Rangers. When they returned to Tynecastle a few months down the line, we then beat them 2-0, and it was yourself who actually duly obliged with the first goal. What are your memories of that goal on that evening?
Well, we had some good times with Andy Gorham because he was living in Pennycook at the time, and I also knew him from when he was playing for Oldham. So he swears blind that it took a deflection, and the deflection sort of took it over him. But I sort of say, well, I played it off the defender anyway, so that's how it is. But yeah, a goal's a goal. It was on target, I know that, but it might not have gone in if it hadn't took a slight deflection. But when you only score like 20 goals in your career, you take any of them.
Going on then to sort of memories towards the end of that season. Now, naturally, the feeling was very positive going into that cup final against Rangers that year off the back of those two previous league meetings that we just had with them. What was your feelings sort of the week leading up to the game? Did you feel as if there was a sense of sort of a sort of upturn in your fortunes, that the momentum was behind you, or given how great a side Rangers were at the time with the likes of Laudrup and Gascoigne, did you almost feel as if you had peaked almost sort of too soon, and that you were eventually going to be, getting bitten back by that wounded animal?
I think sort of looking back, you sort of said, on his day we could give anybody a game. And certainly with Rangers, with two victories in 4 games against them, you sort of think, well, yeah, if it all clicks for us again, and everybody stays fit, and we can catch them with sort of like an early goal, or keep it tight for till the last stages, and then it might just be either a mistake or whatever sort of swings it our way. I can remember, I think it was 1-0 going into to half time, and we came out with a positive and said, listen, if we can get an early goal, and it was just one of those unfortunate. We all spoke about it afterwards and say, Gilles was part of the main reason why we did an upturn in fortunes. He came into the goal and he was just enormous for us. And, for him to make that slight mistake, and it just sort of threw us a little bit, and then unfortunately we never sort of got going.
Was there a lot made of Hearts' cup record, even at that stage? I know that, we'll go on to, talk about the 98 final, but even when you first came into the club, were you made aware of just how imperative it was that the club finally managed to get their hands on some silverware, given that it had been so long?
Yeah. I mean, everybody was talking about the Celtic and Rangers dominance of the league, and it was now every sort of thing. It was either Aberdeen that was winning the cups, and it was Celtic and doing the double, or Rangers doing the double, or one winning the league and one winning the cup. And it was sort of like the Hearts fans say, this could be our year, Neil. We haven't done it for yonks type thing so many years. We have won the cup, and they could all name the team that won the cup the last time for them, and you're sort of hoping that you could be like that keep that turn around for the fortunes of the club. The fans were really boisterous and said, "Come on, we can do it." And that's football for you. You get there, and you don't want to not turn up. But unfortunately, just after half time, it all changed for us.
Sticking with those sort of experiences then that you had speaking with fans, that sort of perfectly segues into my next question, Neil. What was your experience like dealing with the fans on a sort of one-to-one basis? I mean, naturally, you'd played all your time down south in England, and there shouldn't really be a huge sort of difference between the behaviour of those both sets of fans. But did you find there to be any sort of major difference in terms of the banter or the way in which the fans tended to try and behave in your sort of general sort of, your own sort of personal space outside of the game?
No, I think, like you say, it depends on what's happened, where you go on the day of the game. So if like Saturday, we'd usually go out for a meal down at Bar Roma and this and you'd get the fan that would be going there with his wife or, with some pals or whatever, or having a drink at the bar. And they're entitled to their opinion and whatever, and some days are good, some days are bad, but I've always found that, you can sit there and you're on that pitch, you don't want to lose, you want to go out there and try your best. Sometimes it works for you and you take the plaudits, and sometimes it doesn't, and you sit there and you say, listen, I tried my best, mate, and it just, it wasn't to be, and we did everything we could. And that's still the same. I still get people coming up to me and saying, "Oh, do you remember this game? Do you remember that game?" And that's part and parcel of where I wanted to be a footballer. I wanted to talk to people, and not saying it as a bad way, but I wanted that to be recognised as a football player. And it's still nice, today when, people sort of say, "Oh, can my son have your autograph? He never saw you play, but I did." And it's just one of those things. I thought that was being part and parcel of a football player.
Now, your interaction with the fans leads me on to ask you the next question, and it's more of a general question from your time before even joining Hearts. Now, you probably are the holder of one of the best nicknames that a footballer could have with regards to being called Dissa. Now, who was it that actually originally christened you with that nickname?
Apparently it was actually the Everton fans at Goodison, but I was never called that as a player until I actually came up to Scotland. And it was Lockie that came up with it in the dressing room. It just said it one day, and obviously with his Bonnie Rig twang, said, "All right there, Dick." And so it just stuck. But actually, nobody ever called it me other than the Everton fans. All the players down there have had loads of nicknames, and you just sort of take it as part and parcel. I've got no sort of downside of what it was called, but everybody in Scotland, even when I speak to, I've actually spoke to Lockie last week actually, and he straight away, it's not Neil or Points or anything, it's all right, this, and it's just part and parcel of what football is.
Speaking of Lockie, he recently held a Hearts quiz evening a few weeks ago. Now, he had a specific round where he was talking about the behaviour of certain players from your time at the club, especially on a holiday after the 98 Cup win. Now, I don't know if you ever made it on that trip, but seemingly a couple of players found it so intense that they had to fly back early. I think it was Jose Katongo and Stefan Adam. Were you involved in that trip? And if so, what were your memories of that?
No. As soon as we'd done the parade on the next day round Edinburgh, I left to come back home too because I was moving back to England. So I'd sort of like packed everything up, packed my car and suitcases and everything, and literally was driving back home. And I think they flew out on the Tuesday or Wednesday or something. So it was just a case of, right, that's what's happening. And, once I'd sobered up from the night before, it was a case of driving back down the road.
I think it's fair to say that the Hearts fans do have an incredibly fond, memory of that squad from that time. Now, from the time that you played with the club during those 3 seasons, which were the most influential players for you as a fellow teammate?
I think you look at every player that played the part through every sort of scenario. It was like joining the club in '95 to going all the way through. Big Slim sort of like came through all the ranks. At 1 minute it looked like he was going to be going. Next minute he came back into the forefront. Then played in the final. You sort of look at Paul Ritchie. Lockie was unfortunate, but like being a stalwart, Jambo, he was like every week. He was there whether he was injured or not, and he wanted the boys to do well. Sadly enough, Stefano, who passed away, so I was really gutted about. He played his part in pulling that team round at certain times. Stefan Adam, Thomas Flugel, all the players that came in at a certain time were not sort of like what you could say, they're just there for the money. They wanted to do well. They wanted to play. They sort of like got on. They loved the city because it is a super place to live, and everything around it. Hogmanay and everything is just superb.
On to the following season then, Neil. Now, would it be fair to say that you took Gary Naismith under your wing during that 96-97 season?
Yeah, you could say so because certain players did it for me. A lad called Dennis Lehman, who was a Manchester City player for quite a long time. He then came to Scunthorpe when I was like a 16, 17-year-old. And although I played a couple of games in the first team, he was one that was always talking to me, always helping me. Said you're going to help me play better, and I'm going to help you sort of play better. So everybody's helped me along my early career, and it just sort of said, well, right, I think my time's coming to an end here, and if you get the chance, Gary, you need to do this, and don't be too upset if he plays you 1 week and don't play you for 2 weeks. That's football, and your time will come, and when it comes, you'll be the main left back for Hearts for quite a few years.
How is it then sort of trying to deal with that moral dilemma? Because you're essentially guiding someone to take your position.
I think it's just a natural thing with certain footballers. Well, certainly myself. It's a case where, if you're going to get transferred and the manager doesn't like you in your career, then that's a different thing. But that's still nothing to do with players. That's to do with managers' opinion of you. But at the end of the day, if you know that you're coming to like you're 33, 34, and you're coming to, you know yourself that you're struggling a little bit with the pace of the game. You not quite getting over injuries as quick. Your pre-seasons are getting more and more harder. And then all of a sudden you see this young lad who, end of the day, does want encouraging, does want the guidance. He is going to have bad games like you had when you were younger, and somebody put your arm around you and said, listen, your mistakes are going to get fewer, you're going to get fitter, and you're going to get more experience, and at the end of the day, the fans are going to love you.
Now, it could be argued that one of the things that seemed to accelerate Gary's sort of position into being Hearts' future left-back within the club at that time was due to a memorable game for more negative reasons than anything else at Ibrox, the week leading up to a quarter cup game against Celtic at Tynecastle. Now, during that match, 4 Hearts players, unfortunately, were sent off that day, you being one of them. Now, when we had Paul Ritchie on the show a couple of years ago, Neil, he could not divulge on radio what exactly he said to the linesman to get himself sent off. Am I right in thinking you probably need to say no comment as well?
Well, I was going to challenge it because, like, when it came through and Jim said, you've been suspended for 3 games, You're also being fined by the club. And I said, well, what actually did I get sent off for? And he actually said, well, the referee's comments were foul and abusive language to the linesman.
Yeah.
And I said, well, the linesman couldn't have heard me from where he was, because I was like, say, everybody sort of said, oh, and he's kicked the post. And I do remember I've kicked the post a few times. I've kicked a corner flag a few times in sort of like aggression, but I never sort of thought you could get sent off for kicking an inanimate object. So it actually was with what you call gestures towards the linesman. But at the end of the day, it was sort of like a funny sort of thing where we sort of sat in the dressing room and we thought we could have had like a revolving door on the dressing room, because every sort of 2 or 3 minutes somebody was coming bursting through.
Yeah, I have to admit, I've never seen that before in my life. Even watching Richard Gough trying to plead with the referee not to send off any more players and the fear that the game was going to get abandoned, it just became so farcical.
Yeah, it did. I mean, the thing one for me was the start of it, where Davy Weir got sent off against Jury.
Yeah, that's right.
Because at the end of the day, even now, I still sort of say, well, both of them didn't do anything too drastically apart from like go head to head. But we've seen that a lot more times in football these days. And so long as like you don't actually go to butt anybody, it seems to be like, well, lads, come on, calm down. Whereas both knowing, I'm sure everybody would turn around and say, knowing Davey was a gentle giant, he played the game at the right way, he went in hard, but he wasn't that type of player to headbutt anybody, really. And the way the referee sort of booked Jury and then red carded Davey Weir straight away, sort of like it was a shock. And then the next thing, it just sort of escalated, and you do lose it as a player. But to the actions, and you want people to sort of help you, and that's what I always say now. The refereeing linesman didn't sort of help the game.
Going on now,
but we didn't help it either.
I mean, going on now to sort of like a fan's perception of yourself, Neil. Now, you're going back 20 odd years from when you actually initially joined the club. Now, nowadays it's a lot easier to get, information on players that your club are interested in or just about to sign through YouTube videos, and naturally the exposure of live football's obviously grew and grew since those early days of Sky Football with the Premiership. Now, the thing that I always remember of you as a player is just those sort of panini stickers. So whenever you signed someone from down south, it was always a case of just looking at a mugshot and then trying to make your guesses and assumptions based on that. Now, another couple of players who joined the club roughly about the same time, and I just wanted to get your view on them as fellow sort of Premiership regulars, but both seem to sort of struggle a little bit to make an impact, were Darren Beckford and Jeremy Goss. What was your impressions on, what happened with them when they joined the club and why their stays seem to be so brief?
I think Darren's still a good friend of mine, to be fair, and I think with Darren he does have a tendency to have sort of really a laid-back attitude. And I always remember sort of saying to Jim, listen, there's a lad that's not got a club at the moment, and he might just be, do a job for you up front. He's a good target man. But if he's correctly motivated, obviously, he was £1 million player at one time. And Jim said, all right. And I always remember him coming up, training. He stayed with me, actually, in my apartment flat in Edinburgh. And I said, listen, if you get your head down, Darren, you'll enjoy it up here. So, you can score goals in this division, and, you really will enjoy it. So, right, yeah, and Jim was so impressed with him with his, sort of 4 weeks that he was there, and said, right, go on then, I'm thinking of giving him a contract. And the next thing, he signed the contract, and Darren just sort of, went on the lazy route again. Little bit of, didn't do his training how he was doing it, and just thought, well, I'm here now, and that's that. And Jim didn't like it, so I think he got a 6 months contract with a view to a year, and Jim just said, no, I'm not doing it. With Goffey, I just think it was a case of his family didn't settle, and because she didn't settle, he didn't settle, and then he didn't sort of feel comfortable, which you know yourself can happen with quite a few players. They just don't buy into wherever they live in.
Yeah. Well, that is a fair enough comment with regards to that in any walk of life, especially with any job. Going on to your last season with the club then, Neil. Now, naturally, you sort of seem to make way for Gary after the turn of the year, and he was sort of slowly becoming our sort of main left-back. So when it came into the Scottish Cup run, there wasn't a lot that you could do, and you somehow ended up getting made, I don't know if it was an informal or formal suggestion to be made videographer for the 98 final. Now, how did this come about?
Well, the thing about was I did an interview with the Daily Record about just after Christmas about certain things, and Jim already knew what my plans were to do, and he said, right, well, we'll sort of blend Gary in a little bit. You know, you play games, I might play Gary in the cup games, and so to speak. And we sort of thought, right, yeah, no problems. And then I did an interview with Daily Record, and unfortunately, I let my guard slip, and the last question of the interview was, are you looking to sign a new contract, Neil? And I just said, no, unfortunately, I've made a decision that I'm going to go back down to England and, you know, look for a bit of a player coach's role. And then the next thing was Pointon quit Tynecastle. Jim was fuming, and I said, well, listen, I'm sorry, I've got sort of stitched up a little bit. He said, right, well, that sort of made Gary's position a little bit easier, and he's going to start as soon as we get back into February. So I said, right, fair enough, I've made a mistake, but we'd already spoke about it. And then got towards the cup games, and he was talking, Jim was talking to a girl called Hazel Irving, is it?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, and then she said, oh, we were thinking about, she said she had the idea of, like, would one of the players be up for, you know, doing, like, a day-to-day diary? And Jim said, yeah, I've got the perfect guy for that. And he just asked me to do it. And I said, yeah, no problems. It keeps me involved. I'd seen, obviously, watching the FA Cup from the age of 9, of certain things that I sort of really like seeing, you know, around the breakfast table, boys sort of like running around into each other's rooms. And I didn't realise at the end of the day, I think I'd maybe done about 22 hours. But like, I still see it now, you know, so a few of the people that I see and the younger lads that I coach, they sort of say, oh, we've seen you on like the 98 Cup final, and was that you doing all the filming, and why didn't you play, and so to speak. But I just said, well, that was my role on the day, that I just sort of like documented as much as I could.
How did you find the week leading up to that game, in terms of a difference between that and the 96 final? Was there any major difference in terms of how confident that squad were at that time? The fact that you had went through those experiences of playing in the two finals in 96 in the Scottish and League Cup?
No, I think they were very similar. Jim was very good, and Billy were very good at like keeping everything sort of like when we were training in football. That was sort of the intense bit, and, you know, we need to keep it at this level, a high level in training, and, you know, what time to relax is this. And obviously Jim loved his golf, and sort of like down to the Belfry and a little bit out the way, and this, that, and the other, and really settled. You know, a few people were still wondering about what the team was going to be. Well, was Robbo going to play? Was Robbo actually going to be one of the substitutes? And, you know, what sort of formation were they going to play in, and would the likes of all the kids that they would sort of had in the team were going to, you know, do okay? Alan McManus and, you know, sort of like Paul Ritchie, how were they going to do? And then it was just a case of, you know, get on with the game. As soon as the game started, and everybody sort of, all right, go on, then we're still in this.
Now, what were your memories, in particular being a spectator at that game, and was it quite a strange experience for you?
No, I think the strange one was trying to get on the pitch at the end. That was the strange one. Just because, like, you know, obviously the game's going, the longer it's going, you're getting more and more excited. And, right, come on, we want to get on there. Lockie was with myself, and we were sort of eager to get down on at the pitch side. And then somebody said, oh, you might not get on because of what had happened at Celtic Park in the league game. And he said, well, I kept saying, well, this isn't a league game, this is a cup final. And then went down, and Jim was trying to get us on the pitch, and then the chairman was trying to get us on the pitch, and the FA sort of representatives were adamant, you're not going to get on, we're not going to have any crowd trouble. And it was like, well, there's 10 of us want to get on, and Jim was saying they're part of the squad. And then eventually somebody came down, I think it was a little bit higher up, and he said, no, let them go on. And then running on the pitch, and the boys were like jumping up and down, you know, and that feeling, that's something different that I've never had. So to see the boys, the faces, such young ages win an FA Cup, it's, mind blowing, really.
Now, is it possible to describe what the events of the next day were like, considering that you are on radio and it needs to be family friendly?
Well, obviously, coming back on the bus down Gorgie Road to Tynecastle, and next thing you're coming in and, with boisterous, feel the boys' champagne's out. We're coming down the road. Don't get me wrong, it's not a double-decker bus, it's a single height bus, and that next thing, Blocky had popped one of the skylights, and he was on top of the bus, and a few more lads were like, right, I'm up there, they're like, what you doing, you're worth a lot of money now, but no, there was no stopping them. And then once we hit the start of Gorgie Road, it was like unbelievable. The coach was slowing down, people hanging out of windows, on top of roofs, kids being held up, and you can just imagine that was like all the people talking to you for about 3 years about our time will come, our time, we've waited so long, and it was just awesome. Something that I didn't sort of see from the Everton days. We didn't win anything with Everton. Sort of like we were behind the Liverpool team, but just on the double, and the crowd was tremendous. But that feeling of being part of a team that actually wins that, that'll stay till the grave.
Well, I have to say, being part of that squad, everyone here, not only in the studio but every Hearts fan, I think it's safe to say I can speak on their behalf tonight, definitely has very fond memories of you, Neil, and I'll just wish to thank you again for all the time you've given me this evening, and hopefully we will see you back at Tynecastle in some capacity in the near future.
Yeah, that's lucky rang me. Apparently there's May the 20th, there's a reunion of that squad, so if anybody wants to go and buy some tickets, get in there quick. So I'm looking forward to that, and thank you very much for getting in touch.
Perfect, Neil. Take care of yourself, buddy.
Cheers, Scott.
Bye-bye. Thanks again to Neil Pointon there for the time that he's given me this evening. So hopefully everyone in the studio and also listening at home have enjoyed that. We will make sure that we get that out in podcast form as well later on this week, alongside some other extra content that we're looking to provide you with over the coming weeks as well. As I said, Craig Leach is in Studio 2 just now, speaking with a very well-established ex-Hibs player, and that will be going out as our special episode on Christmas Day. We'll also be looking at producing some further content with regards to getting a special Heart Star introduced for our New Year's Day special. Now, I'm just going to now bring in Sean and Mark again, just to see if they've got anything further that they wish to add, either with regards to the weekend's action that's just passed or the midweek action that's upcoming.
Taking it from a Heart standpoint, I think coming away from getting 3 points, it should be a better atmosphere than we've had regularly at Tynecastle. More positives to go into the game. My dad, who is back from was a season ticket holder for many a year, now lives in France, was back over, and I have to say was somewhat disappointed sitting next to him at the game with the atmosphere, considering it was in the new stand. We've not been there for very long, so I hope with that win under the belt there should be more songs from the start. There should be a bit more encouragement coming from the stands. I think that could be a big factor in Hearts getting more points, especially at Tynecastle just now, because it definitely got us through games earlier in the season. One that I can pinpoint is the Hamilton game away. The fans were excellent that day, and I think helped get the team through a sticky situation later in that game. So that can definitely be a positive. I think also the pivotal thing going into tomorrow's game is Kyle Lafferty getting a goal. He's been crying out for one for a wee while. I think that's the only reason. Slight injury niggles as well there, but I think the main reason Isma's been getting in the team ahead of him is because Isma's been coming up with the odd goal, or at least challenging the keeper a lot more. And I really hope that goal will give him the confidence to push on, because he gives 110%. You saw how much the goal meant to him. I just hope Hearts can take the foundation from that win and build on it and actually make a run going into January, because just now the majority of players are slightly on a sugary peg at this moment in time. It's easy to say that quite a few of them could be replaced by players coming in January. So it's time for them to stake a claim and make sure that they are still going to be starting in the team come especially the derby. So I think Hearts, it's a winnable game tomorrow night. It definitely has to be 3 points coming away from it. I think one would be somewhat a step back. So I'm quietly positive, but a midweek game you can never tell, especially in the frosty weather we have currently at the moment. Mark, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm anticipating, we already spoke about it earlier in the show, that Easter Road's going to be sold out, so I have no doubts that it'll be absolutely bouncing at Easter Road. I think the crowd will be right behind everybody. They'll be right behind the team. It's not going to be an easy game. Rangers are coming into it off the back of 3 wins. They've huge boost mentally, defeating Aberdeen twice in the past 3 games. That have been 2 major scalps for them. But Hibs are full of confidence at the moment, especially with the resilience that they showed after coming back from 2-0 down against Celtic and almost unbeaten ending their unbeaten run at the end of the game there. So I think it'll be an evenly matched game. I'd like to see Hibs come out on top. Hibs don't have the fear with the Old Firm that they used to, and that'll hopefully show through on Wednesday night. And I'll be looking for a Hibs win if I'm being honest.
Perfect, lads. Well, here's hoping that in a week's time when we're back on the show, we've got a collection of huge wins to focus on with regards to next week. So thanks again for your time this evening, and stay tuned to some more great music on Radio Saltire.